Welcome to Aunty K's Tarot, your favorite radical queer indigenous auntie, bringing you tarot every day. Hello everyone and welcome to Aunty K's Tarot. So today I am going to do a Andor wrap-up talk. And I did record some thoughts from season 3 or from week 3, and they needed to be edited because I kept yawning, and then I think I deleted it by accident. Anyway, I was tired, and the last 2 weeks were a lot for me for various different reasons. And I'm kind of glad this is how it went down, because this is what I want to talk about as Andor season 2 wraps up. And Nemik and Luthen and Kleya. Okay. I was upset at the end of season 3, or at the end of week 3 with Luthen, and how, like, he had helped seed this rebellion, but it didn't feel like he'd really helped seed his spy techniques. Yes, he taught Cassian how to, be a spy, but only Kleya really knew how to put it all together. Only that he didn't pass down. I was kind of upset about it. Anyway, pass all kinds of skills down people, but he really helped seed the rebellion, even though different factions had various inputs. That's pretty normal. And like a movement will have people sprint off and go join another movement, sometimes over varying political shifts and beliefs, or movements have rises and falls, and all the stuff trying to bring it together into something bigger, and all of that. But now that the alliance has come into something big, to the point where, like, you're going to actually be able to fight the Empire. We see how many of them scorn Luthen, despite, like, the impact he had. Like, how many people who've joined the alliance got there through connections to Luthen and his connecting the dots. So I was upset that he didn't seed all his knowledge of how to do things, but he connected people. And even though he left Kleya very isolated, he connected the rebellion. And that they don't like him is so heartbreaking, because it's real. And, like, I have seen people who were actually the people behind, like, one movement or another movement, or this action or that action, like, really be involved. And by the time it flourishes, and when we're talking about indigenous actions in the Americas, we're talking more like Gorman-sized successful uprisings versus alliance rebellions of, the small scale stuff over here. Because we're not skilled enough in rebellion, we're not learning from the outside enough in rebellion, and we're listening too much to the ethics of the core to mount a more successful rebellion. That's why our rebellions are more small scale, like the Gore, and why some indigenous scholars, and why some indigenous folks who watch Star Wars are like, oh, but I related to the Gore. It's like the Gore are representative of like France in World War II, actually, not us. We were represented in Canary, and that was real. And we're represented in rebels like Cassian. So, but it's because we've been pacified by the ethics of the core, and that's also why our efforts are so small. We're the Maya pays, and we want to be bigger than that and become Cassian, and we can. We're just gonna have to sacrifice some things along the way. Okay, so on topic. I have seen folks be influential, and as they age, become crazy or toxic or kind of shift their politics to a much more people-pleasing, handshaking. Seen older folks get puppeteered when they're this one happens more in like their 70s and 80s, when older folks are less emotionally stable, and then they get puppeteered by people puppeteering around this elder who's not who they were as an elder in their 60s. In traditional times, you weren't an elder forever. You did get retired from that role, because you get to a point in age where like you just don't have the patience for some of the strong stands elders need to make. And this is similar in like activism. Like you can get to a point where you're like getting more toxic. And Kleya's right. We're lucky Luthen stayed in it because he ended up getting the information he needed. And that's what he stayed for. The whole galaxy should be thankful, but they don't know that they should be thankful. And Kleya is right. And also, your likelihood of ending up like Luthen or Saw, if you don't see your end game, is strong, and you have to decide, like, do I really want to be Saw? How does most of the galaxy feel about Saw? They despise him, but also, just like Luthen, there would not be a rebellion without Saw. Bail and Mon, as much as they have feelings about Saw and Luthen, their way, like, they held the rebellion back by a decade or two. Like, they held it back from the beginning. They did. They held it back from the beginning. No. There's a better way to do this. There's a better way to do this. And that one alliance leader, I can never remember her name. Is it mentioned? Okay, so big pacifist, we stopped seeing her. Probably because you can't have a rebellion and be afraid to fight. You can't. and yet they get remembered more fondly than the Luthens. And it's sad and it's heartbreaking and all of that. This was messy. I had a lot of feelings. Some of them are hard to describe because there's people who like are dear to me that if you met them now, you'd be like, man, it's not easy to stay in it as long as Saw or Luthen. It's not. Okay, so the other same side of this is Nemik, and that Nemik speech is something they don't know where it came from. It keeps popping up everywhere.
Armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in the cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And then remember this. The Imperial need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks. It leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear.
I'm assuming you've heard it before.
Bits and pieces.
This is amazing to me, and it's important, and it makes me think of Anarchist Library. Have you checked out Anarchist Library? There's a lot of stuff on there that I wouldn't necessarily call anarchist, but it is a place where people can share their revolutionary thoughts, their inner Nemiks, and some of them get passed around, and I think of that and how that's happened so many times. And so sometimes, you know, somebody gets to write a book. Usually you're, you know, have enough. Hang on.
Food. Fredo's meowing at me as she wants food.
Okay. Can you top it up since you're...
What?
Okay, I'll do it in a moment. I hear her eating, so it's not gone. Yeah, like maybe if you have money to sit around in a cafe talking and writing letters and travel, maybe some people get to print books, but some will maybe never get known. Some might get... Sometimes they get to make it into books, and here's one. This is The Fight for Turtle Island by Eric Gowan, an indigenous anarchist who passed away way too soon, just a few years ago. But this book is read by some of us, and who knows what influences it will have on revolutions, and who knows. People in this book have been writing. Some people in this book, you'll find their stuff on Anarchist Library, and then they get interviewed and it gets into a book, and also on Anarchist Library, and all these little inner Nemiks, and whose might get passed around and be that spark, and there's these inner Nemiks all over the world, and in other places they have been the backbone, the poets, the inspirational thinkers, the manifestos of rebellions for freedom and liberation in other parts of the world, and the importance of Nemik's words, like speak, write, put your words out there, put them out on YouTube and podcasts and in all those places. Nemik didn't know how his life would end other than hopefully seeing the results of the rebellion or in the rebellion. And it was in the rebellion, probably much sooner than he expected, probably before he finished. And he passed on his manifesto in hopes of inspiring this one person, Cassian. And it went on to light up the whole galaxy. So, it's, of course, the children of a princess who, and their friends who end up with medals, unless one of their friends is, the wrong species, then they get their medal quietly away from the core. Queen Padme Amidala's children, Luke and Leia, would not have got to be our force-wielding heroes if Nemik hadn't inspired Andor, if Luthen hadn't connected Andor and others in a rebellion, if these people hadn't taken these risks for this piece of information that they would get to pass on, and that the Force healer and Destiny and like regular people who were not the Jedi heroes of Star Wars also had destinies that were tied to Luke and Leia's destiny, that were also destinies about blowing up the Death Star. They had Force destinies too, even if they were not Force sensitive like Luke and Leia. I didn't expect it to give me the unsung hero vibe in the Nemik and Luthen way. I expected it in the Andor way, but that I got it in the Nemik and Luthen way also is great. And I was disappointed that Bix went off to have a kid, but also I'm going to call that a personal judgment, because maybe, no, I had kids and dragged them to things, but then with my youngest, when he was 5 or 6, I was like, okay, your siblings can take over. I'm retiring and I'm going to work on myself and give you all my mothering attention that I can, and be at home. And so actually, and I remember Adriana in the interviews being like, I'm so proud of Bix. She was so strong in who she becomes at the end. And then I was disappointed that she wasn't still fighting in the rebellion. But also, thank you for telling a story where we're reminded that this is also strength. To say, my ego is not so strong that I think I have to stay in this rebellion. I can stay home and raise one of the children that my fellow rebels are fighting this rebellion for. And and say, go carry on and be a rebel without me, and that's also strength. And I'm crying. Because I also needed that message, because I look at who I was as strong, and you know, I've even had like close friends like, oh, you're not so radical now, because I'm home, and it's okay. I did my time, and that is also strength. I stayed home before I came to Saw, as much as I love Saw Gerrera and think I would like to go out like that. I actually want to go out like Bix. Except at 50 instead of, oh, how old is Bix supposed to be? Late 20s, early 30s? Yeah. And listening to also the interviews where they're like, it's about all these women. And to be in it till it wins doesn't mean you have to be the one physically fighting the entire time, as long as you're supporting it. And that community amino Rao somehow was connected to Luthen and supporting things. So I'm tired again. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I hope I have a chance to edit these.